There was a woman named Fatma who lived an ordinary life in a busy city where millions of people passed each other every day without truly seeing one another. She was 33 years old, worked as a librarian at the city's main public library, and lived alone in a small apartment with her books and her prayers. Fatima had never married, not because she didn't want to, but because the right person had never appeared. She had accepted this reality with quiet patience, trusting in God's plan even when loneliness sometimes felt overwhelming. What Fatima didn't know as she went about her daily routine was that someone had been asking God for a meeting with her for the past 6 months. This person had never seen her face, didn't know her name, had no idea where she lived or what she did for work. But he had been praying desperately, consistently with tears and sincerity, asking God to arrange a meeting with the woman who would become his wife. And now, because of those prayers, something shocking was about to happen that would change both their lives forever. The man's name was Ahmed, and he was 36 years old, a paramedic who worked long, exhausting shifts saving lives and witnessing human suffering daily. Ahmed had been married once before years ago, but his wife had passed away from cancer after only 2 years of marriage. The grief had nearly destroyed him. For 3 years after her death, he had barely functioned, going through the motions of life while feeling dead inside. But slowly, through prayer and the support of his family, Ahmed had begun to heal. He had learned to accept that death was part of God's plan, that his wife's time had been written before she was even born, and that he had to trust in divine wisdom even when it was incomprehensibly painful. Now, 5 years after losing her, Ahmed felt ready to try again, to open his heart to the possibility of marriage once more. But this time, he approached it differently. Instead of relying on matchmakers or family connections or his own limited efforts to find someone, Ahmed decided to put his trust completely in God. Every night after the Isha prayer, he would perform 2 units of voluntary prayer and then sit on his prayer mat with his hands raised, speaking to God with complete honesty. God, you know what I need better than I know myself. You know the woman who would be right for me, who would help me get to paradise, who would be a blessing for me and whom I could be a blessing for. I don't know where she is or who she is, but please arrange a meeting between us. Please orchestrate our paths to cross in a way that only you can arrange. I'm putting my complete trust in you. Ahmed prayed this prayer every single night for 6 months, never missing a night, never wavering in his certainty that God would answer. His mother would sometimes ask if he was meeting anyone, if he wanted her to make inquiries among her friends about eligible women, but Ahmed would gently decline. I've put this matter in God's hands, Mama. If he wants me to marry, he'll arrange it in a way I could never plan myself. I just have to be patient and trust. While Ahmed was praying every night for a meeting with his future wife, Fatima was living her quiet life, unaware that she was being prayed for by someone she had never met. She woke early every morning for Fajr prayer, spent her days among books helping library visitors find what they needed, and went home to simple meals and evening prayers. Her life was peaceful but lonely, and she often prayed for companionship, for someone to share life with. But she had stopped actively searching, accepting that if marriage was meant for her, it would happen in God's timing. The shocking meeting that God had been orchestrating began on a Thursday afternoon. Fatima was working her usual shift at the library when she received a call from her elderly aunt who lived across the city. The aunt had fallen and injured her hip and needed someone to take her to the hospital. Fatima's other relatives were all unavailable, so despite the inconvenience and her own exhaustion, Fatima left work early and took the long subway ride to her aunt's apartment. At the exact same time, Ahmed was finishing a difficult shift at the hospital where he worked. A major accident had brought in multiple casualties, and he and his team had been working for hours trying to save lives. He was physically and emotionally drained, covered in other people's blood, desperate to go home and collapse. But as he was leaving the hospital, his supervisor called him back. "Ahmed, I know you're exhausted, but we need someone to accompany an elderly patient to her home across the city. She's being discharged, but she lives alone and shouldn't travel unaccompanied given her condition. Can you do this? I wouldn't ask if I had anyone else available." Every fiber of Ahmed's being wanted to say no. He was beyond exhausted, his shift had ended, and he had plans to go home and rest. But he thought about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who taught that serving others, especially the elderly, was among the most beloved deeds to God. He took a deep breath and agreed. "What's the patient's address?" he asked. And when his supervisor told him, Ahmed realized with dismay that it was on the complete opposite side of the city, a journey that would take well over an hour each way. Meanwhile, Fatima had reached her aunt's apartment and found the elderly woman in considerable pain. She called for an ambulance, but the dispatcher said it would be hours before one was available due to multiple emergencies across the city. Fatima made the difficult decision to help her aunt down the stairs and take her to the hospital via taxi, a painful and slow process. By the time they reached the hospital, it was early evening. The doctors examined Fatima's aunt and determined she needed to be admitted overnight for observation and treatment. Fatima stayed with her aunt through the admission process, making sure she was comfortable, handling the paperwork, praying beside her bed. It was nearly 9 o'clock at night when the doctors finally said Fatima could go home, that her aunt was stable and would be fine. Exhausted and emotionally drained, Fatima left the hospital and headed toward the subway station. But when she arrived, she discovered the subway line she needed was shut down due to technical problems. She stood on the platform feeling overwhelmed, trying to figure out how to get home. Taking a taxi would cost more than she could afford to spend, but she had no other option. She was about to call for a ride when she heard an announcement that the hospital was offering a volunteer transport service for visitors who were stranded due to the subway closure. At the same moment, Ahmed had just finished settling the elderly patient in her apartment across the city. It had taken far longer than expected. He had needed to wait for the woman's daughter to arrive, help arrange her medications, make sure she had everything she needed. It was now past 9 o'clock. He had been awake for over 20 hours, and he was so exhausted he could barely think straight. As he left the patient's building, Ahmed's supervisor called him again. "Ahmed, I'm so sorry to ask this, but we have several visitors stranded at the hospital due to the subway closure. We're running a shuttle service to help them get home. I know you're exhausted, but you're already out with the ambulance. Could you make 1 or 2 more stops on your way back?" Ahmed closed his eyes, feeling tears of exhaustion threatening. This was too much. He had already gone far beyond what was required of him. But again, he thought about serving others as a form of worship, about how God sees every sacrifice made to help his creation. "Send me the addresses," Ahmed said quietly. Fatima was one of 3 people who ended up in Ahmed's ambulance for the ride home. She sat in the back, exhausted and worried about her aunt, barely aware of her surroundings. Ahmed drove mechanically, so tired he was operating on autopilot, focused only on getting everyone home safely so he could finally rest. The first 2 passengers were dropped off without incident. Then there was only Fatima left, and Ahmed pulled up to the address she had given. But when he looked in the rearview mirror to tell her they had arrived, something extraordinary happened. For the first time that evening, their eyes met. And in that moment, both of them felt something they couldn't explain. A jolt of recognition, as if their souls knew each other, even though their minds did not. Ahmed felt his exhaustion momentarily replaced by a strange alertness. Fatima felt her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with fear or anxiety. "Thank you so much," Fatima said, her voice soft. I don't know what I would have done without this service. You've been very kind. It's my job, Ahmed said, but something made him add, actually, it's not my job. My shift ended hours ago, but I believe in serving others, especially those in need. Fatima paused as she was preparing to exit the ambulance. That's beautiful. Not many people think that way anymore. May God bless you for your service. Amin, Ahmed said. Are you all right? You look troubled. Is there anything else I can help with? Fatima was surprised by the genuine concern in his voice. She found herself sharing more than she had intended. My aunt was admitted to the hospital tonight. I'm worried about her, but also I'm alone in managing all of this. It's overwhelming sometimes. Ahmed nodded with deep understanding. I work at the hospital. What's your aunt's name? I can check on her condition during my next shift and call to let you know how she's doing. Fatima felt tears spring to her eyes at this unexpected kindness from a stranger. Would you really do that? You don't even know us. God knows you, Ahmed said simply. That's enough for me. They exchanged phone numbers so Ahmed could update Fatima about her aunt. As Fatima walked to her apartment, she felt strangely light despite her exhaustion, as if something important had just happened, though she couldn't quite identify what. Ahmed drove back to the hospital in a daze. He had transported hundreds of people over the years and never felt anything like what he had just experienced. That woman in the back of the ambulance, there was something about her that had touched him profoundly. The gentleness in her voice, the sincerity in her gratitude, the way she had spoken about God so naturally. And those eyes, when their eyes had met in the mirror, he had felt something shift in his chest. That night, when Ahmed finally got home after his impossibly long day, he didn't go straight to bed despite his exhaustion. Instead, he performed ablution and stood for his usual 2 units of voluntary prayer. But this time, his prayer was different. God, thank you. I asked you for a meeting, and I think maybe it just happened. I don't know if she's the one, but something felt different when I met her. If she's the woman you've chosen for me, please make it easy. If she's not, please remove this feeling from my heart. I trust you completely. The next day, Ahmed called Fatima as promised to give her an update on her aunt's condition. The call was brief and professional, but at the end, Ahmed found himself asking if she would like him to continue providing updates over the next few days while her aunt recovered. Fatima agreed gratefully. Those daily phone calls over the next week became the foundation of something unexpected. They started with updates about her aunt, but evolved into longer conversations about life, faith, values, dreams. Both of them were surprised by how easy it was to talk to each other, how naturally their conversations flowed, how much they had in common despite being strangers. Fatima learned that Ahmed was a widower who had endured tremendous loss but emerged with deeper faith and compassion. Ahmed learned that Fatima had dedicated herself to serving others through her work at the library, helping people find knowledge and resources. Both of them were struck by the other's genuine kindness and sincere faith. After a week of daily conversations, Ahmed made a decision. He called Fatima and asked if he could be direct with her about something important. Of course, Fatima said, her heart racing though she didn't know why. I need to tell you something, Ahmed began. For the past 6 months, I've been praying every night for God to arrange a meeting between me and the woman who would be right for me as a wife. I didn't know who she was or where to find her, so I just asked God to orchestrate it. When I met you that night in the ambulance, I felt something I've never felt before. A sense of recognition, as if my soul knew yours. I believe God answered my prayer by bringing us together in a way neither of us could have planned. Fatima sat in stunned silence, her hands trembling. Then she began to cry. Why are you crying? Ahmed asked, concerned. I'm sorry if I've made you uncomfortable. Please forget I said anything. No, Fatima said through her tears. I'm crying because for the past year I've been praying for the same thing. I've been asking God to send me the right person if marriage is meant for me, to arrange it in His way and His timing. I never imagined it would happen like this in an ambulance at the end of an exhausting day, with a stranger who showed me unexpected kindness. But now I understand. This was God's answer to both our prayers. Over the next several months, with proper Islamic etiquette observed, Ahmed and Fatima got to know each other with the intention of marriage. They involved their families immediately, met always in appropriate settings, and approached the relationship with the seriousness it deserved. Every conversation reinforced their initial feeling that God had indeed brought them together. 6 months after that shocking night when they first met, Ahmed and Fatima were married in a simple but beautiful ceremony. During his speech at the wedding, Ahmed shared their story publicly for the first time. For 6 months I prayed every night, asking God to arrange a meeting with the woman who would be right for me. I had no idea how it would happen. But God, in His infinite wisdom and perfect timing, orchestrated a series of events that brought us together. My long shift, Fatima's aunt falling, the subway breaking down, the volunteer transport service, any one of these things not happening would have meant we never met. But God aligned every detail perfectly because He was answering both our prayers. He looked at his bride with tears in his eyes. This is what happens when you truly trust God with your affairs. He arranges meetings that you could never plan yourself. He brings people together in ways that seem shocking and impossible but are actually His perfect design. Years later, Ahmed and Fatima would tell their children about the night they met, about how God had been orchestrating their meeting all along while they were simply going about their daily lives. They would teach their children to pray with sincerity and trust, to ask God for what they need, but then surrender the how and when to His wisdom. Your father asked God for a meeting with me before he even knew I existed, Fatima would tell them. And I was praying for the same thing without knowing about Him. God heard both our prayers and arranged something shocking. A meeting in the most unlikely circumstances at the end of an exhausting day in the back of an ambulance. If we had tried to plan it ourselves, we never would have met. But God's plans are always better than ours. This is the truth that transforms how we approach our needs and desires. There is someone right now asking God for a meeting with you, praying for you before they even know your name. And God is orchestrating circumstances, aligning events, moving pieces into place to answer those prayers in ways that will shock both of you when they finally happen. Your job is not to frantically search or anxiously manipulate circumstances to force meetings. Your job is to pray, sincerely live righteously, and trust completely that God will arrange what needs to be arranged in His perfect timing. The meeting will happen when it's meant to happen, in a way you could never plan yourself, bringing together two people who have been praying for each other without knowing it. So keep praying, keep trusting, keep living your life with faith and purpose, and be ready for the shocking moment when God answers by arranging a meeting that changes everything, a meeting that was written in your destiny before you were even born. A meeting that will make you understand that God's planning is infinitely better than anything you could have imagined for yourself.